Hello and welcome back, my incredible AP Insight family. Abby Phillip here. What goes here comes there. And in the last 11 years, or at the very least the last 13 months, Donald Trump has burned enough bridges, broken enough promises, and created enough anger to fill a stadium. Welcome back. Tonight we're tracking a big developing story about when that kind of heat turns and points directly at the man who created it. Stay with us every second of it. But before we get there, let's establish something critical about Donald Trump's relationship with violence, because context matters a lot here. Cast your mind back to the now infamous exchange on 60 Minutes. Trump, speaking with what can only be described as extraordinary brutality, floated the idea of deploying U.S. Army paratroopers on the streets of Washington, D.C., not a symbolic deployment. Actual boots on the ground, with weapons, with bayonets. The reporter pressed him. Specifically, what are you suggesting the military do to American citizens protesting in those streets? His answer, his actual answer on national television, can't you shoot them? Just shoot them in the legs or something? Let him breathe for a moment. The current president of the United States suggested that the military put bullets in the legs of American protesters. That's what we're talking about. That's the man at the center of tonight's story. Now grab that picture, put it there. Because Representative Robert Garcia, a member of the House Oversight Committee, recently asked the question that every single person in this country should demand an answer to, and it connects directly to what happened outside Mar-a-Lago early this morning. The question Garcia asked trumped everything else. Why? That word. Why? Why are the Epstein files still being withheld? Why did Attorney General Pam Bondi stand in front of cameras and tell the American people, oh yeah, the files are sitting right there on my desk, and then proceed to do anything? What is the real reason? Because there has to be one. Governments don't intervene on evidence of a child sex trafficking network for no reason. Bureaucracies don't react, delay, and deviate without direction from somewhere. So the question isn't whether there is a reason. The question is, what is the reason and who gave the order? And here's where things get even more revealing. Joe Rogan, a man who helped Donald Trump gain a lot of time and platform real estate in the lead up to the 2024 election, has now turned his attention to the issue. Rogan isn't tiptoeing around. He's calling it a shell game, a performance, a disguised deception of transparency. Listen to what Rogan actually said about the so-called release of the Epstein documents. He pointed out, and rightly so, that what was handed over to the public wasn't really a release. Pages were blacked out, portions were erased. The redactions were so thorough and so aggressive that the documents were practically useless. He compared it to a satirical Onion headline, the joke being that the CIA was apparently working with a black highlighter the whole time, stamping every line that mattered and calling it a revelation. And Rogan nailed the cultural sleight of hand at work here, too. He noted that the ongoing serious conversation about the Epstein files has been almost completely drowned out by a whirling carousel of other stories, immigration enforcement incidents, international conflicts, economic chaos. Rogan openly admitted that some of this noise is not accidental. It creates distractions. The circus keeps going, so the audience never pays attention to any one tent for long. And the tent they least want you to stand in front of is the one with Epstein's name on the door. There was allegedly a small initial document release. What was in it? Photos, pages of blacked out text, enough visible material to generate headlines saying files released, not enough material to answer any serious questions. A photo that circulated briefly was so aggressively edited that it looked more like abstract artwork than official records. The people running this operation know exactly what they're doing. At least release it, make headlines, claim to be delivering on a campaign promise, move on, except people aren't moving forward. And that's where Democratic House Judiciary Committee member Jamie Raskin enters the story with surgical precision. Raskin is tracking it with the kind of focused, relentless attention that the subject demands. He has spoken clearly and on the record. Donald Trump ran his 2024 campaign with the Epstein files as a centerpiece promise. This wasn't a footnote. This wasn't some vague proposal buried in policy documents. He said it in stages, in interviews, directly to supporters. I will release the Epstein files, full stop. That was the commitment. So what happened after Trump returned to the White House? According to reporting and Raskin's public statements, the FBI was instructed to send about 1,000 agents to go through the Epstein materials. 1,000. The stated goal was to search those files for any material, photos, videos, documents, linking current and former government officials and public figures to Epstein and his network, and what came back. According to the report and references in those discussions, investigators came back with the finding that Donald Trump himself appeared in all of that material. His name, his face, his presence is documented in all of the evidence. And what happened immediately after that? The tone of the entire operation changed. Suddenly there was no rush. Suddenly the files were complicated. Suddenly discretion was needed. Suddenly the whole thing needed to be handled with care and quiet. Translation: he needs to go. Raskin is calling it exactly what it is, a betrayal. Trump's own supporters, the people who donated money, who knocked on doors, who drove hours to line up at rallies, were told it would be different. They were told the system was broken and Trump would finally be the one to open it up. The Epstein case was held up as the ultimate testament to the crimes of the elite, the ultimate symbol of a two-tier justice system that protected the powerful while everyone else faced the consequences. And those supporters believed it. Many of them still do, even as the evidence suggests they were sold a story that they were promised would never end. Now let's build a picture of who has already taken violent action against Donald Trump over the past several years, because this context is essential to understanding what happened outside Mar-a-Lago early Sunday morning. Thomas Matthew Crooks, shooter at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania in July 2024. One bullet hit Trump in the ear. Rally attendees were killed. 2 others were seriously injured. Crooks was 19 years old. He was a registered Republican. Ryan Wesley Roth. In September 2024, he was caught hiding with a rifle in bushes near the Trump golf course in West Palm Beach. Roth reportedly spent time in Ukraine after Russia invaded and had strong views about Trump's stance on the war. He was a registered independent voter, Tyler Robinson, charged in connection with a separate threat against Trump and allegedly linked to a plot alongside Charlie Kirk, depending on which report you follow. His family, Trump supporters. Now add the name that broke overnight. Austin Tucker Martin, age 21, from Cameron, North Carolina. He drove his car through the secure north entrance of Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida, at about 1:30 a.m. Sunday morning. Secret Service agents were there. A Palm Beach County Sheriff's deputy was there. Trump himself wasn't at Mar-a-Lago. He was at the White House when the breach occurred. Martin was armed. He had a gas can. He had a shotgun. According to Secret Service spokesman Anthony Guglielmi, investigators believe Martin purchased the shotgun while he was already driving south from the state. The box of weapons was later found inside his vehicle. He entered the gate as another car was driving, taking advantage of a brief window when the barrier was open. 2 Secret Service agents and a sheriff's deputy immediately confronted him and ordered him to drop both items. What happened next, according to Palm Beach County Sheriff Rick Bradshaw, who spoke at a press conference shortly after the incident, Martin put down the gas can. Then he raised the shotgun to the firing position. Both agents and the deputy opened fire. Martin died at the scene. The investigation was immediately declared active, and federal resources were committed. The Moore County Sheriff's Department in North Carolina confirmed that a family member reported Martin missing early Sunday morning, essentially the same time the incident was unfolding in Florida. The FBI is committed to devoting full investigative resources to the case. Director Kash Patel issued a public statement on X reaffirming the Bureau's involvement and commitment to doing everything it can to learn about Martin and his motives. Initial accounts from people who knew Martin in North Carolina painted a portrait that made the whole story feel real. His cousin, Braden Fields, who was 19, spoke to reporters outside the family property in Cameron and reacted with pure shock. Fields described Martin as quiet, as someone who actively avoided guns, as someone who came from a family of staunch Trump supporters. Fields included himself in that description, making it clear that this was not a household with political animosity toward the president. "He's a good kid," Fields said. "They grew up together," she said. She described Martin as someone who gave a portion of every paycheck to charity. He worked at a local golf course. He didn't talk politics in any serious way with the people around him. "He wouldn't hurt an ant," Fields said. "He doesn't even know how to use a gun." Fields said he couldn't reconcile himself with the person he knew who was being reported. He said the whole thing was mind-blowing. And then, within hours of those initial family statements, more information began to emerge that began to explain though certainly not justify, what had been driving Martin in the days and weeks leading up to Sunday morning. TMZ obtained a text message that Martin sent to a coworker on February 15, 2026, just a week before the Mar-a-Lago incident. In the message, Martin wrote, and these are his words as reported, "I don't know if you read the Epstein files, but the evil is real and unmistakable." He continued, "The best people like you and I can do is use the little bit of influence we have. Tell other people what you hear about the Epstein files and what the government is doing about it. Raise awareness." This message was sent 10 days ago when he entered the secure perimeter of the president's resort with a shotgun and a gas can. Sources who worked with Martin at Pine Needles Lodge and Golf Club in North Carolina told TMZ that after the recent wave of Epstein document releases, however thinly veiled and redacted those releases were in fact, Martin became increasingly consumed by the subject. According to these sources, he was deeply convinced that a government cover-up was actively underway, that powerful people were being shielded, that the machinery of government was being used to protect individuals who had committed horrific crimes against children. He talked about it at work, he brought it up in conversations, people saw a change in him, the fixation was building. Now stop and sit with that for a moment, because here's what we're actually looking at. A 21-year-old from a family of Trump voters, a man described by those close to him as gentle, charitable, uncomfortable around firearms. A young man who, based on the evidence currently available, was radicalized not by the opposition media, not by Donald Trump's political enemies, not by Democrats or liberal activists. He was radicalized by Donald Trump's own failure to do what Donald Trump himself had promised to do. Apparently, he was led to a pivotal position by seeing the man he and his family supported stand up to the mob and swear to expose the truth, and then, once in power, quietly begin to bury it. That's the story, not just the shooting, not just the security breach, the real story. Let's get straight about what Trump promised and what has actually been done, because the difference between those two things is the valley into which this young man apparently fell. During the 2024 campaign, the release of the Epstein files was considered a near-sacred pact in some corners of the Trump base. The argument was simple and powerful. The deep state, the elite networks, the corrupt establishment had been protecting each other for decades. Jeffrey Epstein's operation, which involved the documented sex trafficking and abuse of minors by politicians, businessmen, foreign nationals, and prominent figures from the ideological spectrum, was the clearest, most indisputable evidence of how that protection worked. Epstein died in federal custody under circumstances that independent forensic examiners and numerous credible voices have ruled are not consistent with suicide. His accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted, her client list was classified, and Trump said, "Not on my watch, I'll give you that name. I'll release those files." The promise was red meat for millions who had spent years watching powerful figures escape accountability while ordinary people faced consequences for far fewer crimes. It wasn't a blanket belief. It was mainstream within the Trump coalition. And he said the words. He made the commitment, publicly, repeatedly, unequivocally. What the FBI's review of those materials returned, if the reporting is accurate, changed the calculus entirely. Because when investigators reviewed the evidence and found Trump's own name and image allegedly woven through it, the political logic of complete transparency collapsed overnight. You can't be the president who releases the files if the files contain you. You can't campaign to drain the swamp if the drainage reveals your own reflection from below. So the files got complicated. Pam Bondi's desk became a very interesting piece of furniture. Files sat on it allegedly without moving. Releases were made that weren't really releases. The backlash swallowed the material whole, and the distractions, deportation flights, tariff wars, international events, flare-ups of culture wars, kept the news cycle moving so fast that it became difficult to maintain public pressure on the Epstein question. Jamie Raskin is not letting it go. He has been outspoken about it, and his framing is important because he is not making a partisan argument here. He is holding Trump to Trump's own standards. You said you would do it. Your supporters believed you. Where is it? The question is simple. His refusal to answer it is telling. Joe Rogan's public spat with Trump on this issue carries a lot of weight in a special and important way. Rogan is not a Democrat. He is not a traditional media figure. He is not part of any political establishment. He spent countless hours hosting Trump leading up to the 2024 election, bringing him to an audience of tens of millions, his credibility with the segment of the electorate that helped Trump win, and now he sits on his platform and says to that same audience, "This is a shell game. They blacked out the pages. They didn't release anything meaningful. They're playing you." When the people who helped you win start to describe your behavior as wrong, publicly on the record, to the same audience they helped you reach, that's a significant political development. It doesn't necessarily produce immediate electoral results, but it creates something potentially more dangerous in the short term. It creates people who believe in promises, who have no other outlet for their anger, who feel betrayed by a person they thought was finally on their side, and who are sitting alone absorbing information that tells them evil is real and unspoken and the government is covering it up. It's an unstable psychological environment, and it seems that Austin Tucker Martin is living within it. Let us be very clear, we are not suggesting that political desperation justifies or explains armed action against anyone. It does not. Full stop. A 21-year-old man is dead. Secret Service agents and a sheriff's deputy were put in a life-threatening situation at 1:30 in the morning. This is a tragedy on every level, regardless of what was in Martin's head or what led him to that door. But journalism, real journalism, requires us to follow the thread. And the thread here leads directly to a promise that was made and a promise that was broken. It leads to a political operation that weaponized public anger over child sex trafficking for electoral gain, and then, once in power, apparently began working to withhold and suppress the information it promised. And it leads to the inevitable, predictable result of so much anger, so much frustration, and so much perceived betrayal among people who had no other political home. Thomas Matthew Crooks, registered Republican; Ryan Wesley Roth, political independent; Tyler Robinson, family of Trump supporters; Austin Tucker Martin, from a family that Fields described as all for Trump, every one of them. This is not a partisan style in the traditional sense. This is not opposition radicalism. These are not people who hated Trump from the outside and decided to act on that hatred. These are people who are inside the coalition or aligned with it or aligned with the worldview that Trump has cultivated. People who took the rhetoric at face value, who believed in the promises, and who broke away when reality didn't match the story they were sold. This is a very different problem from the kind of political violence that comes from ideological opposition. It's hard to address because it doesn't fit the standard narrative. It can't be blamed on the other side. It can't be redirected with culture war framing. It's internal. It's self-inflicted. And it's a direct result of overpromising a base that already believed the system was lying to them, and then providing the exact same cover-up that they were just told by the other side. Let's go back to what Sheriff Bradshaw said at that press conference, because the operational details are important here. Martin entered through the north gate of Mar-a-Lago while another vehicle was leaving, taking advantage of a standard security loophole that opens whenever the checkpoint barrier opens for a vehicle to leave. It's a known vulnerability. The fact that it was successfully exploited in the middle of the night by a 21-year-old North Carolina man driving south and purchasing a shotgun along the way should be deeply disturbing to anyone. 2 Secret Service agents and a Palm Beach County deputy responded within seconds. The order to drop the weapon was given. Martin put down the gas can. The deliberate choice to keep the shotgun and bring it into firing position ended the situation. That agent and that deputy are alive. They made the decisions they were trained to make in a situation where the threat was immediate and deadly. The FBI's request for residents near Mar-a-Lago to review their home security footage is standard investigative procedure in a case like this. Agents want to establish a timeline, confirm Martin's route, determine if he stopped anyone, if anyone communicated with him, if there was any monitoring of his mental state or communications in the hours before the breach. The psychological profile being built by investigators will be crucial. The text messages obtained by TMZ provide a window into where Martin's head was in the days leading up to this, but investigators will want everything. Phone records, search history, any other conversations, anything from his time at Pine Needles Lodge, anything from his drive south. They will want to know when Epstein's fixation began, how it developed, what specific substances he was using, and whether anyone else was involved in enabling or encouraging his mental state. His co-workers' accounts to TMZ tell us that the escalation was noticeable to those around him. When someone in your workplace starts talking with increasing frequency and intensity about government cover ups and the avoidance of accountability by powerful people for crimes against children, and then that person suddenly disappears and reports start coming in that they arrived at the president's house in the middle of the night with a gun, those around them look back and identify the moments where the warning signs were. This process is already happening in Cameron, North Carolina. Braden Fields, Martin's cousin, 19, is processing it in real time in front of the cameras. He told of a cousin who sent money to charity from every paycheck, who worked hard, who was quiet, who he grew up with, and who, in his account, was surrounded by family members who passionately and openly supported Trump. Fields himself is an outspoken Trump supporter. He unhesitatingly indicated this commitment even as he spoke about his cousin's death and apparent final act. It's worth sitting through this detail. In his context, Fields didn't distance himself from the family's political identity. He just kept saying that he didn't get it, that it was mind-boggling, that it didn't fit who his cousin was. And in a way, that response captures exactly what makes this situation so important and difficult. Because from Fields' perspective, Martin wasn't Trump's political enemy. He was a quiet child in a Trump-supporting family who seemed to be breaking under the weight of something he couldn't reconcile: betrayal, cover-up. The evil is real and unspoken. Use what little influence you have. Those words from Martin's text message just 10 days before his death are going to be the center of every conversation about what happened here. That's because they are not the words of someone spoken in a fit of rage. They are not the words of someone who hated Donald Trump. They read as the words of someone who believes evil is real, believes that powerful people are getting away with it, and concluded that doing something, anything, is a moral obligation. This is a radical path. And it was built in significant part from the inside out. Here's the question that no one in power wants to answer directly. What is the real plan to handle the political fallout from Epstein's promise? Because it's not going away. Jamie Raskin is not going away. Joe Rogan's audience is not going away. The people who donated money and voted based on the belief that those files would be opened, they're not going away. And the longer it goes on, the deeper the backlash, the more extensive the machinery of distraction, the more the pressure builds among those who have no institutional channels for it. Trump has faced this before in various guises: the wall, full and complete health care on day one, announcing everything. Every era has a promise that serves as a pressure release valve for a coalition that is fundamentally based on distrust of institutions. The promise itself is the product, not the delivery. But with Epstein, the stakes are different. The subject is children. The defendants are the most powerful people in the world. The evidence of the cover-up is already partially visible in the amendments themselves, and it seems that the man who made that promise fell silent the moment the evidence allegedly pointed to him. The silence is deafening, and in some corners of the internet, in some households across the country, in some leaders who are already prepared to believe the worst about institutions, that silence is being heard as confirmation, not an apology. Confirmation. Pam Bondi's handling of it, the files on her desk, the public statements, followed by the eloquent inaction, hasn't helped. The contrast between this administration's aggressive, high-energy, camera-forward approach on virtually every other issue and its sudden silence on Epstein is stark and noticeable. It's the kind of contrast that those who are already suspicious see, and take notice loudly. The broader political reality that this story represents is one that neither side has fully grasped. The Epstein network, and the question of who he touched and how those connections were organized, sits in genuinely dangerous political territory for figures across the spectrum. The documents that have been released, even in their heavily redacted form, connect the dots that affect individuals regardless of party affiliation. A full release, if it ever comes, will not be a partisan weapon. It will be something like a political earthquake with no predictable epicenter. This may be the real reason nothing has moved, especially not Trump's protection, a collective institutional decision that the damage is too broad and too deep and too two-sided for the system as a whole to survive any serious transparency. But here's what the calculation, if accurate, fails to account for. The people who were promised these files don't care about protecting the system. They were told the system was corrupt, they believed it, they voted for it, and now they're watching the man they trusted to burn it down apparently choose to protect it instead. For some of them, the response to that realization is political disillusionment. They leave, they defect, they feel foolish and move on. For others, apparently, the reaction is different. Three previous incidents of violence or attempted violence against Trump from within or adjacent to his own political universe. Now the fourth, each one driven by a different combination of grievances, delusions, and frustrations. Each one ended badly. The pattern is not a coincidence. It is the expected result of building a political movement on the promise of reckoning that keeps being postponed.